Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Dynasty After Dark. We're your hosts, Calvin Timms and Dale Terry. Find us over on Twitter at TDC_Calvin and at Dynasty_Dale. And we are continuing with our series of recapping all the offseason changes for all 32 teams this entire offseason. You guys got to forgive me. Hopefully you guys can be a little lenient with me here today. I'm going through a little bit of a cold. Kids are great. They always get me sick. So, hopefully my brain can keep up with what I'm thinking, but I'll just try and hang in there. So that said, like I said, we're going through the recap, full offseason recap for all 32 teams. We're dropping one every single day in the month of July. And yeah, we're about halfway through. We're finishing up the AFC South. If you're looking for any of the other AFC divisions, we've already put those up, but the South, by the time you're listening to this one, we've only got two more in the AFC, and then we're jumping into the NFC, and it's going to just keep rolling there. And it is crazy to me that we're, part of the way through July, and DeAndre Hopkins and Dalvin Cook still have not signed. But, once we get those two signings, we're going to drop a couple of extra videos. And in the month of August, we're going to, go through a couple of mock drafts, and then we're going to go through a few more of the, we might touch on a little bit of redraft stuff as well in the month of August. But yeah, the content train just keeps running. How we doing today, Dale?
Hey, I am doing much better than you.
Yeah.
I'll say that. I'm feeling great, and I'm excited to talk about one of these teams today.
One of them. Oh, yeah, yeah,
One
yeah.
of them.
This one, right? The Indianapolis
Yeah.
Colts. And Colts are a good team. They're definitely on the up and up. But before we jump into the breakdown, if you can, please leave a like, comment, or subscription on the channel. It's just going to help us out with the algorithm. There's been pretty consistent numbers of people watching these, so we
Mm-hmm.
appreciate that. Thank you guys for tuning in. Now, you guys are tuning in, so if you can, just please leave some sort of comment at the bottom. It just helps us out. I know you're like, oh, I don't want to be the only one to do it, but if everyone starts to comment, it's it's a feedback loop, right? So please just comment
Absolutely.
down below. There's a lot of you guys that are listening, and it just helps us out there. And we like to hear from you guys. So anything you guys have any thoughts on or any changes you'd like to see, let us know. But the Indianapolis Colts, they are a good team, and we're going to break down the coaching staff changes first. We're going to go through those, then we're going to talk about some of the free agents that they lost, some of the guys that they added, recap the draft, and then give our dynasty thoughts on all of these players at the very end of the video, position by position. So it's going to be a jam-packed episode. We're going to try and get through it as quickly as we can while being as informative as possible. But before we get any further, Dale, any last thoughts?
Nope.
All right. So starting at the top, new coach. Now, this team actually went through a couple of coaching changes last year. They started with Frank Reich. Frank Reich got fired, I think, in like week 8 or so, week 9,
Around then,
something like
yeah.
that.
Yeah.
They were not doing very well. They were 3-5-1, so that was week 9 that they fired Frank Reich. Brought in Jeff Saturday as the interim head coach. Never been a head coach, and people gave him a lot of crap, and he said at the end of the season we can judge him for it, and we are all judging you now because it was not a good situation. I thought it
No.
would be interesting. I thought he had some potential, but yeah, it just did not go well. So Jeff Saturday is out of there. They bring in Shane Steichen from the Eagles. He was the offensive coordinator, and this is really interesting to me personally. There's a lot of talk about who was leading that Eagles offense, whether it was Shane Steichen or if it was Nick Sirianni. Nick Sirianni, of course, had a stint with the Indianapolis Colts as well under Frank Reich. So it's all kind of a big circle here that we're going through. But I like this signing quite a bit, especially with who they got at quarterback now. What are your thoughts on this offense?
Yeah, I think it's definitely going to be interesting. I feel this is something that Steichen's going to be really comfortable with quarterback wise
Right.
because he did coach, Justin Herbert. He's had Jalen Hurts, and now
Yep.
he has Anthony Richardson, I mean, they're all mobile quarterbacks in some facets. So,
Right.
I think this should help him, and it should be a comfort zone for him.
Yeah, definitely. And, people have loved Jalen Hurts for fantasy the last couple of years because of
Mhm.
his mobility and he's just solid on the ground, right? And then
Yeah,
you mix in the
absolutely.
passing game work, and it's just enough to kind of elevate him to the top tier of of fantasy quarterbacks. And I think a lot of people are putting that on Anthony Richardson. He is inarguably the best prospect from a pure talent standpoint that the NFL has
Yes,
ever had. And,
absolutely.
you can't deny that, but
Yep.
he is still raw. He only had 1 year as a starting quarterback down in Florida. And I guess we can just jump into the draft really quickly. So obviously they took Anthony Richardson at 4. Everyone was kind of expecting them to trade for Lamar. I was hoping that they would trade for Lamar. I thought it would have made a lot of sense,
Hmm.
but
I agree.
ultimately they stood where they were. Bryce Young goes 1, CJ Stroud goes 2, and then the Texans did them a favor by trading from 12 up to 3 to make sure that they got Will Anderson. So left a quarterback on the board. Whether you liked Will Levis or not, there was all the smoke around that, but they ultimately went Anthony Richardson at 4 overall. They didn't have their second round pick, 35. They traded to Vegas, and with their other second round pick, they took Julius Brents, cornerback out of Kansas State. Third round, this is one that people are kind of hot and cold on. They took wide receiver Josh Downs out of North Carolina. In the fourth round, they took Blake Freeland, offensive tackle out of BYU. They took Adamoitoe Adebore. I'm terrible with these names, so I apologize. Defensive tackle out of Northwestern. In round 5, Darius Rush, cornerback out of South Carolina. Daniel Scott, safety out of California. Will Mallory, tight end out of Miami, and then running back Evan Hall. This was kind of a sneaky signing, I thought, in the 5th round out of Northwestern. He's a good pass catching back there. In round 6, Titus Leo, outside linebacker out of Wagner, and then in round 7, Jalen Jones, cornerback out of Texas A&M, and Jake Witt, offensive tackle out of Northern Michigan. So a lot of these guys, if you don't know, there's a thing called a RAS score. It's a relative athletic score, and it kind of puts your all your measurables into it, right? And kind of gives you just a pure athlete score. And for the last couple of years, the Colts have just been going for pure athletes, and whether that's great or not,
Hmm.
sometimes it hits, sometimes it misses, but a lot of these guys are pure athletes. A lot of them. I mean, even Josh Downs is a very high RAS score guy for what he can do for his size, right? So, um, you can't really fault him too much. But any other major thoughts? I know Anthony Richardson was kind of the big one at the top there, but
Yeah.
any other thoughts
Yeah,
on these guys?
other than that, it's the other sneaky one is Evan Hall. I think he could be interesting. Like he could be the backup ahead of Zach Moss potentially.
Sure. Yeah, I think he's definitely better for sure.
Very, very possible. Other than that, there's no. I mean, Josh Downs is interesting. I like Josh Downs, but like he's another small receiver, and they have decent wide receivers there with Pittman and Alec Pierce that they got last year. So it's a little crowded,
Right.
unproven wide receiver room with a extremely unproven quarterback. So
Sure. But,
it's
Josh
yeah,
Downs he's going to be pure slot for this team, and I like it a lot.
absolutely,
So,
absolutely,
there is definitely some potential. Again, it's going to rely on Anthony Richardson, but we'll talk about all the wide
mm,
receivers here in just a
yes,
minute. So,
yep,
no, it was a good draft. It was a
yeah,
typical, typical Colts draft. There's not really too
yes.
much to hate on it really. There was the potential that they were talking about trading back from 4. They didn't. They stood pat. So, um, you know, they got who a lot of people liked as the number 1 quarterback in this class just based on
Mhm.
athleticism. So, we'll see if he can develop it, but it was not a bad stab for the Colts. They have needed to get a guy for years now, right? All right, so let's go through a few free agents that they added, re-signed, a few guys that they lost as well. So going through the guys that they added or re-signed here, starting with Samson Ebukam, defensive end out of San Francisco. They added defensive end Gernard Avery out of Tampa Bay. Khalid Kareem, they re-signed him. Defensive end, defensive tackle Taven Bryan from Cleveland. Matt Gay, the kicker, they brought him over from the Rams. EJ Speed, they re-signed him. Linebacker Gardner Minshew, this one was kind of interesting. There's actually a
Mhm.
news blurb about him today. I
Ooh.
guess the owner, Jim Irsay, he was on the Pat McAfee show today, and he talked
Uh-oh.
about Gardner being the starter until Anthony Richardson is kind of ready, and then whenever he's ready to
Oh,
be the
chill.
starter, he's going to take over. So
Uh-huh.
Gardner Minshew is going to be the starter for a couple weeks for sure, and he's a talented backup. So if anything did happen, I do like the signing quite a bit.
Absolutely.
Tight end Pharaoh Brown, they brought him in. He's more of a blocking tight end. Ashton Doolin, they re-signed him. They love Ashton Doolin here, man. I swear.
They do.
Isaiah McKenzie from Buffalo. This was kind of an interesting one-year deal.
Interesting.
Yep. Brashard Perriman, they brought him in from Tampa Bay. So really trying to bolster the athleticism, right? Brashard Perriman, Isaiah McKenzie, these guys are not the best wide receivers, but they're the guys that, you can plug them in a pinch and they're fast,
Mm-hmm.
right? So
Yes, absolutely.
you can rely on that. But other than that, I think the biggest one is probably Gardner Minshew.
Yes.
In case anything were to happen to Anthony Richardson, you have a solid backup, like Nick Foles. I know he played for this team, but better Nick Foles kind of backup.
Yeah,
here.
no, yeah, I 100% agree with that. And I think if the draft would have went a little different way and they would have drafted Levis potentially, that Gardner Minshew would have probably been the starter all year.
Yeah,
in my
it's
opinion.
possible. It's definitely possible.
And so
yeah, I think that if you are, and we'll talk about the quarterbacks here in a minute, but Gardner Minshew, I don't really think he has a lot of long-term value. He's kind of the Tyrod Taylor of quarterbacks right now, where he's just bouncing around to be a bridge quarterback for some of these guys. And he's a talented backup, but I just think that no team is really going to invest in him long-term. Love it or hate it, I just think that that's kind of where we're at with him. But that does not mean that he should be completely thrown away. I think that he's going to have some potential value where he's good enough as a backup, like Brock Purdy, right? He was putting up good weeks last year, and I think that Gardner Minshew in a pinch could be someone that does that as well. All right, a couple guys that they lost here from the starters. These guys have all been signed. There's a few guys we'll mention at the bottom too. They have not signed with any team, so they could always come back. We have no idea yet, depending on training camp. Brandon Fakazan, cornerback, he's gone. Ben Banagoo, defensive end. Safety, Rodney McLeod. Guard, Matt Pryor. The guard, Matt Pryor, losing him was actually kind of bad, I think. Their offensive line was pretty beat up last year, and this could be kind of problematic because they really didn't bring in too many guys. They brought in a couple athletes in the draft, but nothing crazy. So they really need that offensive line to stay healthy, in my opinion. They lost Bobby Okereke. That was a big loss for them as well.
It was.
Linebacker. They lost punter Matt Hack. Nobody cares. Wide receiver Paris Campbell. He's now with the Giants as well. Then they also lost Tony Brown, cornerbacks Tony Brown, Isaiah Rodgers, David Vereen, Tyler Richardson, defensive end Yannick Ngakoue. Their defense took a massive hit, in my opinion.
Huge hit.
Guy Thomas, another defensive end, defensive tackle Chris Williams, Harris LaChance, guard, another guard that's gone there. Matt Ryan's gone. Nick Foles is gone. Darrington Evans, running back. He was a depth guy. Aaron Samplin, running back. Titus Sween, another running back there. Armani Watts, a safety. Dennis Kelly, a tackle. Tight end, Nikola Kalinick. Some of these guys I've never even heard of, so they must have been like practice squad players. Yeah. Jalen Weidermeyer, another tight end, and then wide receivers, Tyler Adams, Braxton Westfield, and Christian Wilkerson. So all in all, again, the names that they lost on the defensive side were big. They're big name guys, and this also includes they traded the cornerback Stephon Gilmore to the Cowboys as well this offseason. So their defense has taken a pretty big hit, and I do not think, we talked about their draft already. I don't think that they really replaced them at all. They got athletes, and hopefully those guys can develop, but sometimes you don't want an athlete. You want a good football player, and that's kind of what is the risk.
I will say that I will say that their GM, Chris Ballard, is very good at evaluating talent.
I will give him.
Yeah. So I mean, I don't know how good of a GM he is, but as a scout, he's fantastic.
Oh, for sure, they nail it in the draft like almost every year.
all the time. So I'm not worried about them getting the in-home guys. It's just the guys. It's just guys having guys stay like like the Bobby Okerekes of the world. Right. And I'm sure they were glad to let Paris Campbell go after a while, but
Right.
like it would be nice to have reliable speed guys that can catch the ball from Anthony Richardson.
Right.
So
You're right. Yeah, it's just I agree with you 100% on Ballard. I think that he's an amazing evaluator of talent, but
yes,
dude, their
100%.
off season every
It's always
year, man. It's like
I
what?
always
Okay,
think they're gonna make a splash somewhere, but
and they
they
never
make
do.
like
Like
they never and they never do, and it's really
they have
disappointing.
so much money right now. How are you not? How have you not signed
Spending it on
Hopkins?
somebody,
How have you not signed Hopkins? Like how?
right?
How?
That's because Hopkins doesn't want to go there.
Yeah, probably.
Is
But I mean,
why.
you could throw the
Is why.
bag at him.
But
Who
still,
cares?
exactly. I
He
know.
said that he would go to the Chiefs if he would have gotten enough money. He's the only reason he's contemplating Cleveland is because they're throwing a ton of money at him. Like Indy,
Right.
what are we doing, man? Like every year it's the same thing. Like, oh, we're gonna go get this guy. We just don't want to spend the money. Like, okay. All right, all
Right.
right, all right. And guys, this is fair. I grew up in Indiana for almost my entire life. Like I'm allowed to rail on the Colts. They're so frustrating. They've been garbage most of my life except for Peyton Manning, right?
All
So
the time.
yeah, exactly. All right, so let's jump into their actual roster. Again, their defense took a pretty big hit in my opinion. They lost a lot of stars. They're really relying on some of these guys to fill the gaps. And again, Chris Ballard, he has done a very, very good job of making sure that there are guys behind the guys, right? But again, it doesn't always mean that they're going to develop into those superstar players. And that's where
Yes.
you really need
100%.
them. And I do think that their defense is still talented. I don't know if it's a top tier defense. I don't know if it's a top 10 type of defense. And that's what I think you're going to need for this team to be really competitive in year one. And then offensive line
Well,
wise,
well, well, well.
go ahead.
On the other hand, I will say that I'm not super worried about their defense because they're going to be playing two potential rookie quarterbacks this year. Well,
True.
4 times a year. So like they're going to be playing Stroud, potentially Levis.
I don't think
So
I still think it's going to be. I
it,
think
it's probably going to be Tannehill.
right,
I don't disagree with that, but it has the potential to play
sure,
not very good teams.
right,
So
right. Yeah, that's the one nice thing. The AFC South is not the heavy
strongest
hitter.
division.
It's like it's like those pictures that one of these things is not like the others. You look at the AFC South compared to the rest of the AFC, and you're like, meh,
Mhm.
you don't really. You're an NFC division. That's what that's how
Right.
this kind of
Basically
falls,
at this
right?
point, yeah.
But we'll talk about the other teams when we get to them. But there's some potential there for sure. Now, offensive line wise, again, they were really banged up last year. When healthy, this is a very good squad, but they really need to be healthy. And you saw a lot of problems last year. And with this rushing attack, maybe that can kind of help them a little bit because it's gonna put Anthony Richardson into space a little bit more. But I'm just a little nervous on that, especially with, I guess Florida didn't have the best offensive line last year, so Anthony Richardson shouldn't feel too much, out of practice with what he had to deal with
Right.
last year, right?
He shouldn't, but yeah, I don't know. I don't think it's gonna matter, but that's a discussion here in a bit.
All right. So, all right, let's jump into the actual skill players here and we'll
Yep.
give our quick thoughts. We've broken down Anthony Richardson a ton this whole
Mhm.
offseason.
Yes.
We always had him and we still do as our quarterback number 2 that we'd want in
Mhm.
fantasy. A lot of people are taking him very highly. I've seen him going ahead of guys like Justin Fields. I think it's a little bit
Mm.
premature.
It
But
is. It
all
is.
these, yeah, it seems like it's just rookie fever right now. And I've seen guys like CJ Stroud going ahead of Kyler Murray. So, CJ Stroud's our quarterback 1 in this draft class. I'm not taking him ahead of Kyler Murray as much as I like
Right.
CJ Stroud, unproven. Like, we know what Kyler is, and he's only a couple years older than CJ Stroud, right? So, I do think people are reaching a little bit on Anthony Richardson. But again, the ceiling is definitely there, right? You have a Jalen Hurts type of ceiling. I just don't know if he can reach that potential. I think more likely he's going to be a universally top 10 quarterback every year, but
Yeah.
probably near the bottom of the top 10.
Yeah. And I feel that's gonna be fool's gold in my opinion, because I mean that's going to be good for Dynasty. Don't get me wrong. Like
Right.
you're going to have a couple years that are fantastic, but
Sure.
I think the wheels are going to fall off sooner than later. In
Yeah.
my
Yeah, it's definitely possible. Now, again, a lot of this kind of falls on Shane Steichen, which I think he
Yep.
has. I think if anyone's going to maximize Richardson, it is going to be him. I do love
Yeah,
this pairing quite a
agreed.
bit. So,
Agreed.
yeah, Anthony Richardson, I think, probably quarterback number 12 to 13 right now in Dynasty. That's where I'd be comfortable
Mm.
taking him. He's going around like 7 or 8, so you got to be a little careful with that, but definitely has the ceiling potential. Now, running back wise, why is everyone so down on Jonathan Taylor? Can you break it down for me?
I would say the biggest thing is Anthony Richardson. In my opinion, well, it's kind of twofold. Is that at the end of last year, well, and most of last year, like he was injured quite a bit.
Right.
Um,
Well, here's the
and
question, right? They were out of it.
yeah,
They were out of
yeah,
contention pretty
yes, they
early
were.
in the season, right? So was
Yes, they
he
were.
was he too banged up that he couldn't come back, or did Jim Irsay say, "Let's keep this guy healthy for next year. Let's make sure he's just ready to
Yeah,
go."
I think that's more what it was because it was
Yeah,
already a lost season once he got injured,
right.
and then they were transitioning to Jeff Saturday and that experiment, and honestly, like the touchdowns weren't there, which I think they will be more this year than anything. Like I'm not sure
Yeah.
yardage wise he'll be as good, but I think touchdown wise he will be back to the 2021 form in my opinion because of Richardson's threat at the goal line.
Yeah, and I could see his touchdown. So I'm actually a little bit different from you in this regard with Jonathan Taylor. I think his touchdowns are going to be hit a little bit because of that goal line threat with
Fair
Richardson.
enough.
I mean, look at what the Eagles did with
Yeah.
Jalen Hurts.
Hurts.
Just
Yeah.
sneak, QB sneak. You can't stop it. You cannot stop
Hmm.
it, and you're not going to be able to stop a QB sneak with Anthony Richardson. The dude's too
No.
athletic, right? So anytime you're within the 5 yard line, it's just going to be an AR touchdown, right? So I do think that's going to impact JT a little bit here, but I think the yardage is actually going to go up more towards that 2021 season because people are going to have to worry about Anthony Richardson. He's going to be a problem, and that's going to open up
Hmm.
Jonathan Taylor for some of those sneaky plays where they hand it off to him instead, where, oh, the
True.
linebacker freezes for 1 second because Anthony Richardson starts to the right and JT's going to the left, and then he realizes, and that's going to be all Jonathan Taylor needs to bust off a long run, in my opinion, right?
Right.
So,
No.
um, I think it's a little
Yeah.
bit opposite, but we both kind of agree that
Yeah.
he's going to
Yeah.
be
Yeah.
good, right?
Yes. Yeah. So it's with that. So are you over under 1,500 yards for him this year?
Oh,
I think that's a pretty good line
safe,
for him.
yeah, safe money is
Honestly.
under, right? I guess the
Yeah.
safe money.
I think I wouldn't be shocked if he hit about 1,300 and maybe 10, 11 touchdowns.
I know I
I
want
think.
to say
I
over,
think.
but yeah, the safe bet would be under. But yeah, that's where still 1,500. Even if you're 1,300 yards, that's really good for running back. So,
Oh, it is
um,
absolutely. Yeah.
yeah. So
Yeah.
people are freaking out on JT. I don't get it personally, but
Yeah, I don't either, but the problem with the running back position is it's just so volatile, and when you have a guy that's your dynasty cornerstone like Jonathan Taylor, like you need to keep him and not trade him away or get super freaked out about it.
right, unless you're getting a haul, if you can still sell them
Yeah,
at like
absolutely.
RB2
Yes.
value, I would do
Yes.
that. But yeah, otherwise, I think that yeah, people have been freaking out on him too much. All right, let's jump over to the receivers and the pass catchers here. So there's a lot of guys here. You've got Josh Downs, Ashton Dulin, McKenzie, Brashad Perriman, Alec Pierce, Michael Pittman Jr., Michael Strachan, Malik Turner. Tight ends, you've got Mo Alley Cox, you've got Kylan Granson, you've got Will Mallory, Jelani Woods. Is there anybody? So obviously everyone really loves Michael Pittman. I've never really been that big of a Michael Pittman fan personally.
Same.
I is he the one to want a roster in this group though?
I would say of all of them, yes.
I would see. I'm
I I
personally
I
think
I
it'd be
th-
more
I,
Alec
I
Pierce.
think I I think the thing is that I think this is a contract year for
It is.
Pittman is for Pittman, and I wouldn't be shocked if the Colts aren't able to re-sign him because they don't like to spend any money for whatever reason, even
It's
though they
true.
have a bunch of it.
That is also true.
But I think for this year, I think it's probably going to be Pittman, Downs, Pierce.
I would actually say,
Oh,
yeah. I can see that. That's probably likely, but
Yeah. Yeah.
I think Pierce is the one you want to own, man. I really do. I like his
That's
talent.
fair.
He
I do
showed a
too.
lot last year too. He showed a lot of flashes, and with the arm talent that Anthony Richardson does have, like he does have a pretty good arm. I think that if he can, Alec Pierce is fast, man. He is very, very
Right.
fast. So if you can get him on the outside on those one-on-one matchups, it's very possible that he's the one you're going to want to own. But
Mhm.
he could be the most
Agreed.
volatile one as well. So,
Right. I think with that, I'm just worried about Anthony Richardson's ability to make those kinds of passes game in and game out.
right. Yeah,
And
and that's what. Yeah, that could be
you
part
know,
of the learning curve
that
too, right?
that's just me. And like, I feel Michael Pittman is like your short intermediate guy.
Right.
Downs is your flats
Short
over
guy.
the
Yeah.
middle.
Yep.
Yeah, short guy, and Pierce is over the top. So
Right.
I mean, I really like Alec Pierce, but I just don't have enough faith in Richardson's passing ability right now to
Sure. Yeah,
make a
we'll
decent investment on him.
we'll see pretty early in the year once he
Yes,
takes over.
absolutely.
So we'll see where he's kind of at. But
Yeah.
yeah, so there's a lot of potential value. Again, all the money's going to be on Michael Pittman. If it was me,
Yeah.
I think I'm investing in Alec Pierce the most.
Yes.
People
Yeah.
like Josh
Agreed.
Downs. We all got to remember, Josh Downs is going to be starting as a slot wide receiver as a rookie.
Yeah.
Like, it's very possible that he's not even out there for three wide receiver sets to start. It could be Isaiah McKenzie more than likely over Josh Downs, and Josh Downs is more of a next year type of player, right?
Hmm. That's very
Alec
true.
Pierce was with this team last year, and I think that he does have a pretty good reputation with the guys from everything I've heard from Indy, right? So, and with Michael Pittman potentially leaving next year, that leaves a potential role and opportunity for Alec Pierce. So, of all the wide receivers, that's the one that I'm investing in. I think he's the cheapest with the highest upside, but I don't blame anybody for going for Michael Pittman. He has shown flashes. I think that people value him more highly than they probably should, right? And that's where
they really do.
yeah, like I don't think he's a wide receiver
It,
one.
right. And it's kind of troubling when people crown some of these receivers too early when
Right.
they don't necessarily. I mean, I'm not saying he doesn't have the talent.
Right.
I just don't think he's necessarily had the quarterback to really foster that, and
Sure.
I don't feel he's a solid wide receiver one. He's a
He
very
seems
solid
like a
two.
two, right? He's like a
Yeah,
T.
yeah,
Higgins
yeah,
type of player to
yeah,
me personally.
absolutely, and there's nothing wrong with that. Like
Right.
that's valuable in dynasty, but if
You just gotta be
if you're
realistic with it, right?
yes, very very, and people really sometimes aren't.
Right. Right. Well, this is the year he's going to break out. Just value him where
I
he's at,
know,
and then we don't have to
I
worry
know,
about this whole breakout crap. You know what I mean? Like,
exactly,
um,
exactly.
all right. Now, last position here, tight ends. Is there anybody that we want to roster
Oh.
here? There's so many guys.
The only person I want is Jelani Woods
Yeah,
because
I'm with
he's
you.
athletic. I mean, I do love Mo Alley Cox because he is
Yeah, but
gigantor,
he's done nothing for his
and
whole career.
I know he's
That's the only
I know
problem, right?
I know yeah, but I think the one is Jelani Woods. If he could be a late stash, but
Yeah.
he's not anybody I want to start.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, if you look at Steichen's offense, right? Dallas Goedert was really good in Philly, so it's
Yep.
possible that somebody could take that and kind of break out. Of those guys, Jelani Woods is probably the most athletic, so he probably has the best. And he had good hands too back in college, so
Yeah,
I could see that being the one you want to own, but it's risky. I mean, we don't trust the wide
very.
receivers that much. Are we really going to trust the tight ends right away? So
Not even close.
yeah,
No.
exactly. So maybe just wait and see who's going to break out here. But yeah. So, all right. Any last thoughts on the Indianapolis Colts? They're a good team. I just think that they're
Yeah,
going to struggle a little bit this year, but that's kind
I
of
think they're going to be interesting, and I think with this weak division that they're going to be in the playoff hunt probably into December,
right.
and it's going to be fool's gold in my opinion.
Yeah,
But
they're not ready this
they
year.
will-
I think they've got a lot
no,
of
they
youth
aren't.
too. Just kind of how they like to build up internally. So, you just want to see some potential flashes from this team this year. And again, for Dynasty, I think that there's a lot of long-term pieces. Jonathan Taylor is someone that I really like long-term. AR, I believe in Anthony Richardson a little bit more than Dale and his staying potential. So, I still like him. Just maybe let's be a little bit more hesitant to just,
realistic.
yeah, exactly. That's the one thing I get it. No one ever likes to acknowledge the risk, but we gotta build into that. I
Mhm.
don't like talking about the risks either, but I just want everything to be sunshine and rainbows for all these players. But
I know.
you know,
Agreed.
that's just not how life is. So I'm just I'm not trying to be a wet towel on anybody's parade here, but yeah, I'm just trying to be realistic. All right, so that is the Indianapolis Colts. Let us know your thoughts. I like this roster quite a bit. A lot of offseason changes. I think that'll make them better long term, but
Yep.
they're going to be a fun team, like Dale said, to watch this year. So, if you like the video, please, again, like, comment, subscribe, do all those things. Just help us out. Tell the podcast to one of your friends. We're just trying to grow it out there organically. I could be trying to view bot and all this crap, but we appreciate you guys. All you guys that listen, we appreciate you. So that said, we're gonna wrap up the AFC South. So if we haven't gotten to your team yet, again, it'll be coming here in the next couple of days. We're wrapping up this division, then we're going into the NFC, and that's where that'll be interesting. There's a lot of good teams in the NFC as well. So until next time, thank you guys so much for listening, and have a good night.